Emma Bryant, it is such a delight to be recording a podcast episode with you.
Oh, that's so lovely. I love hearing you say Bryant as well with the American accent. It makes it sound a lot better.
And then I will kick off by asking you the question I ask everyone, which is, how do we know each other?
It's funny because I remember, I think it was the peak of when my mental health took a decline, and my lovely, lovely parents sent me every article about mental health, so much so that I just didn't end up reading any of them. I just thought, I don't know, I love my parents, but I think they kind of just become obsessed with like one thing and trying to help. So yeah, there was just like a flood of mental health resources my way, which is very much appreciated. And one of them was a link to one of your blog posts. And I was like, you know what? My parents have put in effort trying to, I guess, send me resources. So I had a look, and I remember reading a couple of your entries, and it was late at night, and I ended up crying to myself. And I think I told you this, but it's because I felt so seen and understood. And it was almost like, sort of like a life hack since, you're like me, but in the future. So I really got to have, I guess, someone else articulate how I was feeling. I was very confused. I didn't really know how to word things. And then, yeah, I just felt less alone. And then I thought, you know what, I have to let this incredible person know how much they've sort of made me feel, yeah, like less alone. So I think I shot you a message, and then you replied so quickly. I wasn't expecting it, especially since like I knew that you had quite a large following on like LinkedIn and all this, and like on your blog as well. And yeah, I really appreciate the effort that you did in returning my reply. And then I think the friendship just sort of blossomed from there. You made time for me. We had lots of Zoom calls, and I guess you were sort of like a mental health mentor to me, which was amazing, and you're amazing. And I feel like I owe a lot of the conversations that I've had about mental health to you, because I was quite anxious about it and I felt quite self-conscious, but with you it always came with such ease. So I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you. I remember the first message I got was actually from your dad. And it was really surprising because he had sent me this very kind note about one of my blog posts. In fact, it was the blog post that I wrote about Melbourne and about how I had, for a really long time, because my own mental health had been in such a state of decline, I had been just grasping at whatever I could to try to feel like I was better, I was healed, I was normal. And the place on earth that I feel most like myself is Melbourne. It since the first time I was there, it's felt like my center. It was like finding out I was homesick for a place I'd never been. And when I was in the absolute depths of my major depressive episode, I didn't feel that way. I thought I'll go to Melbourne and I'll be fine. And I went to Melbourne and I wasn't fine. And that was part of what made me realize just how much work I had to do to not make my mental health about things that were external to me, and to start putting the effort into learning how to live with what happens in my head. And so it was really amazing to me to get this note from your dad. And what he said to me was that he had had a hard time understanding what you might be going through. And he just couldn't imagine it. And when he read some of what I wrote, he could he could start to understand. And although it was not his experience, he was able to develop an understanding and an empathy for the experience. And that mattered a lot to me because that is a big part of why I started writing about mental health and my own experience, was because of that. if you haven't been through this or you haven't just been side by side with somebody who is, it's hard to understand the heaviness. It's hard to understand just this overwhelming sense. Sometimes it's dread, sometimes it's just inertia. And I really wanted to find the words. And so when I connected with you, it was marvelous because I also felt really seen and I didn't feel judged. And I felt like I had someone else I could talk to who also understood and at the same time didn't pretend that, your experience and mine were identical, but they were resonant. And getting to know you has just been this delight and to see your glow up. Because when we first became friends, you were just at the beginning of your uni journey. You were really thinking about what was next for you and what was the first step of your career going to look like. And to have had a front row seat to see you blossom and to see you have just this wonderful start to your early adulthood and to see you already making a difference in the world. It, it's just been awesome. And you're so much fun. I'm just really grateful that even though we are on opposite sides of the world, we've had this opportunity to get to know each other and to continue to know each other.
I didn't think I would be crying so early on. That was so lovely, Liz. I guess I hadn't realized that my dad reached out to try and understand a bit more. I think, I don't give my parents sort of enough credit, but I guess the mental health journey has been sort of tough in terms of I've had such an amazing upbringing. I've had clearly such lovely, loving parents. I went to a good school. I have a good relationship with my siblings. So it felt really, really hard to justify feeling sad. And so then I guess seeing similarities in your story, you being such a successful and an amazing woman and, dabbling in so many different things, I kind of felt like I could relate. I didn't have this, massive, tough upbringing. I couldn't really justify in my head why I felt the way I did. And then just having you listen and sort of validate me. Sometimes we just need that validation was amazing. And I definitely would not be here, at this stage in my career or even just in general, mental health wise, without my amazing support system, including you. And I feel very, very grateful, like you said, to have a friend across the ways, but with the way that you connect with others, it never feels that like you're that far away. It's been a really tough journey. I did have to take breaks from uni here and there just to give myself, some time and self-compassion because I feel like I struggle with that a lot, especially, like I said, I feel like I've been uber privileged. And then, yeah, I feel privileged in our friendship. The fact that you make time for me, you make time for a lot of other people. You have your own struggles and battles going on, but you help uplift other people. And yeah, I feel like that motivates me to kind of continue doing the same. Obviously, I work in healthcare and a big part of my job is taking care of others. And so seeing you prioritize yourself, but also being able to help others, I guess gives me hope that I can do the same. Sometimes I feel like just giving myself compassion is tough, let alone being able to, I guess, help others at the same time. But, we take it day by day. I know you're always there for me. And, if I need advice on how to cope and deal with that, I'm very glad that I have you, Liz, to talk about it with.
Now it's my turn to get teary. As you were talking, I was thinking about how much resonance I still hear in your story and how when you talk about your experience, how it touches me because I remember being in this headspace where I felt like I had to justify the fact that I wasn't in the mental health place that I wanted to be, and that somehow I must be doing it wrong because for everything that I had going for me, for my family, my friends, my colleagues, my just everything, as you said, this incredible support group, this wonderful system around me, it felt like somehow I was just failing in every aspect because I shouldn't be allowed to have mental health challenges because I didn't have enough bad things. And so was it somehow that I was ungrateful? Was I squandering all this, wonderful support and love that I had in my life? And I had to come to terms with the realization that my brain can just be an absolute jerk sometimes. I wasn't failing because my mental health had deteriorated, and it wasn't something where I could just cure it by saying, but look around me. And so that really resonates with me because it felt like I didn't have the right to be in the negative headspace that I was. And just releasing that made such a difference for me. And hearing you talk about it and how you've released it, and just how much grace and compassion you've learned to give yourself, that inspires me because that is something that I struggle with all the time. It's not beating myself up for things that I don't need to beat myself up for. So, as you were talking, I was thinking about how you have chosen to go into a healing profession. And I'm curious what inspired you to go down this professional path.
I guess from a young age, my younger sister had a lot of allergies and like pretty bad asthma. I wanted more than anything in the world to have a younger sister. And so I guess when she had these health problems, like I wanted to help my mom out. And I found that I had a natural knack for it and I really enjoyed it. And I guess just personality wise, I'd like to think that I'm quite empathetic. I enjoy hearing other people's stories. I enjoy understanding, I guess, their journeys, and people are so incredibly interesting. I saw this quote from a TV show that I was watching. It was basically saying, you never know what internal battles everyone is fighting. And I feel like healthcare, I get the privilege of seeing people at their most vulnerable state and being there for them and not being judgmental. I feel like that's another one of my key strengths. I think healthcare helps provide me purpose. I feel very fulfilled in my occupation. I feel very challenged as well. Obviously, there's a big emotional kind of toll that it can take, which is why it's so incredibly important that I do have a strong support system. But I genuinely don't think I could see myself doing anything else. I think part of it ties into the fact that I did grow up in a religious household where it was emphasized that doing acts of kindness for others are very important. Just the way that I see my parents interact with the world, they're always very giving. So I think it's just been instilled in me. And then my natural love for science kind of complements that really well, being in healthcare. And I always say, like, my favorite part of my job are the patients, because I know that someday it will be me being taken care of, or a family member, or someone close to me, because at the end of the day, we all end up feeling ill or unwell, and we just want our loved ones to be taken care of. So it's kind of just projecting how I would want to be treated if I was in the system, or my loved ones as well. And I think that the way that I nurture my relationship, not to get all religious on you, but the way I maintain my relationship with God is through my relationship with others. So I kind of prioritize being there for others. I think recently I've been starting to train in MRI, and a massive part of that is just giving patients reassurance and, I guess, putting their anxieties at ease. And I can relate to that, being a very anxious person. So it's sort of, in a way, trying to be a big sister to my patients, or, yeah, just putting myself in their shoes. If anything, I probably reap the benefits the most. I have such incredible patients who are very grateful. They all have amazing stories. I actually met an American the other week and learnt that he had performed on Broadway. So yeah, I would say that it's probably the most fruitful career for me, and I don't regret a single second. I think during uni I might have regretted it a little bit, but nothing worthwhile comes easy, and I don't regret one second of it.
Your emotional intelligence and maturity are inspiring to me and leave me awed. I don't remember a lot about my early 20s, but I don't remember having the wherewithal that you do. And I know that a lot of it is just how you were raised in such a loving family, and also how you've just taken so much learning from your own experiences and how much work you've put into yourself. And as you were talking about the start of your career, I wondered what it was that drew you to radiology.
That's a good question. I guess just the nature of initially I thought about nursing. I think when we were all in high school, we don't really know all the different occupations that exist out there, and I feel like it's quite a confusing world, and I feel like you would know more than anyone just how many different jobs that you can try before you find the right one that kind of fits and works for all your talents. So I guess the nature of nursing is they work really long hours, and I feel like they don't get compensated for the amount of work that they do. Just knowing myself and my limits, I didn't think that I would enjoy med school. I feel like I've always associated my value with grades, and I just knew that med school would probably be a little bit too much on my mental health. So I found being a radiographer a good middle ground. It had that academic aspect because I've always been pretty academically driven, and so it would couple that very well with my, I guess, my empathy and my need to connect with others. We're very lucky in radiography where we get to spend quality time with patients, but it's not for extended periods of time. So I get to help in their medical pathway, and I guess I like to see ourselves as photographers or detectives. We help the doctors get a better idea of what's happening with the patient, and we get to assist them through it, but where ultimately we don't have that big level of responsibility to diagnose and then figure out, I guess, the pathway in terms of medicine and treatment. And that just kind of works with my level of anxiety. I think, like you said, it comes with sort of a self-awareness of what my strengths are, but also things that might make it hard to have a long career. And I hope to work in this industry for as long as I can. I'm actually in my dream job, which before 4 years ago, young Emma never thought would be possible. But yeah, I think radiography is a great segue between patient care, but also being able to challenge yourself academically. And MRI physics is a wondrous thing, but it also makes me realize just how much I don't know, which is exciting and daunting. I actually originally wasn't even planning to train this year. It's something that normally people do like quite a few years down the track, just because of how much anatomical knowledge that you need, as well as the physics behind it. But for some reason, whilst I'm a very anxious person, I find myself putting my hand up for a lot of things which I feel underqualified for. And I think it's because I have this fear of missing out, which is somewhat come in handy, I guess, with aiding me and getting opportunities I didn't think that I would. And it just makes me think of how, if you don't necessarily think that you'll get something, but you have an interest and a passion and a drive for it, it doesn't hurt. And I remember in high school, because I went to an all-girls school, I had a chemistry teacher who said that he used to teach in an all-boys school, and he was always astounded at how the boys would always put answers that were nowhere near correct, and the girls would leave the questions blank and wouldn't even try and get a mark, because if it wasn't correct, they weren't going to try at all. And so I guess I go into opportunities, remembering that, sometimes you might, like, you never know what will happen if you don't put your hand forward, and you don't apply for things that you think you'll fail at, or the jobs that you don't think you'll get. And so I think the best things in my life have been the ones where I've pushed myself and, didn't think anything would come of it. But then I've really had to challenge myself, and I've gotten lots of opportunities. And I guess part of that success has resulted in sort of imposter syndrome coming about. And I think, Liz, that we've spoken about it before, but I still struggle with it. I think talking about it with you and other people helps. And I think I've just been really lucky with the fact that the hospital that I'm at, the leadership team are so strong that I do feel comfortable having these conversations about imposter syndrome and identifying, I guess, areas where I think I'm not the strongest at. Because at the end of the day, if I'm honest about my weaknesses, the people who will benefit will be my patients. At the end of the day, it's people who are at the center of, how I go about becoming a better practitioner. And when I put people at the center, it makes it a lot easier rather than my insecurities and self-doubts. If I know that I am doing it for someone else, I tend to be more proactive.
Yeah, I feel that. And the word that comes out for me listening to you is courage. And I think it's something that people who have really had to wrestle with their mental health often don't realize, which is just when you're in that position and you are clawing your way to wellness, it takes a lot of courage to keep showing up. It's a really brave thing to continue to show up when everything feels like it's closing in on you. And as I hear you talking, and you described it as sort of FOMO, the fear of missing out, I hear it as courage. I hear it as bravery. I hear it as persistence. And you have just this incredible will and drive to continue to show up as yourself and grow into that best self. And I think of how lucky your patients are to have you, to have someone not just with your head, but also with your heart. And I wonder for you, as someone who does experience life vividly, I mean, you feel things so viscerally. I'm curious how you look after yourself working in healthcare and knowing that a lot of your patients, especially with the path that you've gone down, a lot of your patients are dealing with things that they may not ultimately heal from. And I'm curious how you are taking care of yourself through this.
I think a lot of it is just talking about it. I'm one of those people who, if I have something weighing on my chest, I just have to talk to someone about it. And so, I'll come home and I'll talk about some of the stories at work. Obviously, patient confidentiality is the utmost important, so I keep it nice and general, but I'll talk about it with my partner, Jason. He's in technology, and not to say that there's not as much emotionality in it, but he's pretty well suited, and so he's very cool, calm, collected, and he's very good at debriefing. So yeah, just talking about it with people. Also, I guess finding hobbies, exercising. It's easier said than done. What I found is, I guess, part of the reason why I felt, despite being successful, quite sad is I've recently been diagnosed with ADHD, and that has made, I guess, a massive impact with the way that I understand my brain and how it works. And I guess the way that I deal with it is being compassionate, realizing that, if I have too much on my plate, it's going to overwhelm me. Sometimes all I can do in a day is get up, go to work, come home, and that's pretty much it. It can be quite easy to fall into the trap of comparison, which I do, especially with a lot of my colleagues who are my age, and then they go to the gym, they food prep, they go out for dinner and drinks, and feels like sometimes I struggle to do the bare minimum. But I think doing the bare minimum sometimes is my self-care. I spoke to my therapist about how I feel a little bit left behind sometimes, but in saying these things out loud, a lot of the time it makes it a bit more real, and I would never say that about another person. So it's kind of highlighting that hypocrisy or that jerk brain, which you so cleverly kind of worded. And yeah, just realizing that these negative thoughts originally are there to kind of push me to be better, but just in my circuitry, it's just too excessive. And so I feel like understanding the fact that my brain is the way it is because it's just trying to, I guess, help me survive or help me constantly improve, it's just a little overboard. And so sometimes that's just sleeping. I'm not very good at meditating. I've been told I should try meditating more frequently. But I guess for me, doing arts and crafts or reading or spending time with my dog. I don't think you can spend time with your dog and ever be sad. So yeah, I think it's just whatever I feel in the moment, I'm trying to write a gratitude journal a lot more. I found that focusing on the good things in my life tend to bring up my mood, and there are a lot of good things. It's very easy to get bogged down, I guess, in the negative, especially when, I am seeing patients who are terminally ill, or I'm seeing patients that are so bright and bubbly despite all the things that are going on in their medical journey. So it's sort of like that reminder, if they're so happy and they're so grateful for where they're at life, then, I should be able to do the same. And that's not to say that, my struggles aren't justified, as younger me wouldn't have been able to kind of understand or forgive. But yes, fighting each day, as you said, taking it as it comes, building on my courage and my determination. And then, some days I'm happy and I'm bright and I can deal with whatever comes my way. And other times I'm curled up into a ball after a long day of work. And all I can do is, I guess, feel the sensations of that anxiety and that stress and then letting it pass. I have such fruitful relationships with people. I'm able to delve into really deep, complicated feelings, and that makes me feel amazing. And the level of vulnerability that I experience at work and in my relationships is beautiful, and I definitely see God in the way that I interact with others.
I hope that you can go back when this episode drops and hear yourself. I really wish we would be able to play this for younger Emma, because you are so put together. I sit here a few years on from where you are right now, and I just think to myself, man, if I could have figured this out a couple of decades ago. I am so impressed always when I hear you talk about living in that place of tension, living in that in-between space between where things feel energized and rosy and positive, and that place where things feel big and heavy and overwhelming. And the thing that I found for me is that I need to not try to keep score of my days as if a day where I feel overwhelmed or I'm having just a really hard time getting my RPMs up, that day is somehow a failure or a failing, because every day that I am here is a victory for me, because there was a very good chance that that day wouldn't be here. And so some days the biggest tick that I have on my list is that I got out of bed. And other days I feel like I am just flying. And it's this recognition that not all my days have to be the same. Not all of them have to feel the same. What matters most is my will to see the next day and to know that I get a fresh start. And it may not be a much better day, but it will be another day. And that is the thing for me now that I recognize and appreciate, that before I just didn't realize and didn't understand. I sort of thought every day had to be awesome. And if every day wasn't awesome and I wasn't always great, then I was, irrevocably broken. And now I realize that it's not true. Life isn't that way. Life is ups and downs, peaks and valleys, but it doesn't have to be extremes of them. And some days, what I do isn't as much as I do on other days, and it's still enough because I'm here. And as I am listening to you talking about the types of relationships you're able to have now and just the way that you're experiencing life, I come back to the things that were like catalysts for you as you were working through your own journey and figuring out how you were going to live your life, knowing that there are times that your mind is betraying you. And you mentioned your dog. So I want to come back to that. What has your relationship with your dog done for you? And what's the story of how you got your dog?
It was during COVID when my parents were, I guess, trying every avenue of giving me that mental health support. I guess it's brought about tears how you were talking about how each day you're here is a win, because it's the same. It's the same for me. Like, no matter how great my week has been, the next day might be so awful that I think that, it's not worth it. It's not worth persisting. Getting my dog during the lockdowns in Melbourne when we were kept at home for so long. It was really, really hard seeing the rest of the world kind of continuing on. But, obviously being in healthcare, I understood the necessity for it. And once again, I'm very privileged with having a good at-home life. So, I was thinking of all the other people who don't necessarily have it as well at home. A lot of people who can't take care of themselves, domestic violence being exacerbated, all these kind of things. And then just getting a dog just really keeps you in the moment. Originally, we weren't meant to have a pet. My parents were kind of done with 4 kids, which is understandable. But my little sister loves animals a lot, and I think my parents had been reading up about how dogs can lessen anxiety. And so, yeah, we I guess just looked online. My dad ended up finding our dog Brooklyn, and we saw a photo and we fell in love. We went to go see her, and I tricked my sister. I said we were going to shop at the DFO, but we actually went to pick up Brooklyn. I think dogs are funny. It's just, they're so happy to see you no matter what. My younger brother isn't the biggest fan of animals, but my dog absolutely adores him. And so it's just kind of funny how, dogs love unconditionally. And it's that unconditional love that reminds me that, I have value. My dog just loves pats from me. The only reason I used to get out of bed sometimes was to go and walk her because she was so insistent. She would whine at my door. No matter what kind of day I've had, she's there to greet me with licks and cuddles, and she reminds me to stay present in the moment. She gets so much joy out of lots of different things, hunting bugs or playing fetch. She's got quite a lot of personality. I think all our neighbors know her. You can hear her barking from a mile away. But when I go on trips, obviously I'm excited to come back and see my family, but the real excitement is seeing my dog Brooklyn and her reaction to me coming home. She almost always gets the zoomies and shows off. But yeah, I think dogs are a great reminder that, you could accomplish absolutely nothing in the day and they will love you to bits. And so it's just, yeah, it's a great feeling coming home to her. And I think pets are the greatest things in the world. And she's just brought me so much joy. And, I I consider a day where I've just gone outside and played with her a success. And she's definitely been a massive part of my mental health journey. And the fact that she can love me must mean that there's, something I'm doing right.
You are someone I know who is surrounded by people who love you, starting with your parents and your siblings, Jason, so many friends and colleagues who just care for you. And I'm curious, what are you excited about that's on the horizon for you?
It's a little bit sad that my first kind of initial reaction to that question before you said what you're excited about was all the things that I'm worried about. I guess a lot of the time I feel like I'm an imposter of an adult, being an adult in my mid 20s now, not early 20s, which is a scary saying. It's quite daunting. I think I'm my own biggest roadblock in being excited for the future. I'm probably a little bit too pessimistic, but just thinking about the next week, I have a charity ball for my partner's work, which is something to look forward to. It's my 4th week of training, so that's more learning, more getting to know different patients, and hopefully feeling a little bit more competent in scanning them. If I think too far ahead, I get too anxious. So I think a week at a time is good. Ideally, I guess I see myself working at this hospital for 40 or so years if they'd have me. I've had conversations about houses and kids with my partner, but ultimately he knows that it's one step at a time kind of with me. So I'm I'm excited for the next week to come, but in terms of long term, I try not to boggle myself too down because I know myself and I get too stressed. But I hope to do a lot of travel. That's giving me some motivation, and I feel like, stepping out of home, just getting a taste of the real world, I guess, and not just the little bubble that I put myself in, the waking up, going to work, coming back and just doing it all again, sort of breaking up that cycle and being able to step away and, you know, see your life from afar is definitely very useful, and travel is definitely one of the most rewarding things that have kept me grounded. And I think it's part of why I'm here today, just seeing the joy that other people have despite their struggles. Obviously, my mum, being from Tonga and all, I've seen poverty, I've seen the hardships that others have had to persist through to get to where they are. And so I think it's just definitely made me a lot more grateful for where I am and the fact that I even have, the opportunity to purchase a house in the future, or I do have, that financial independence because of my work and because of the opportunity of going to uni. That's something that my mum didn't have, but my mum is very, very hardworking. So I guess in a very broad sense, I'm excited to kind of take what I've been given and then hopefully, even if it's my small bubble, make life a bit easier for someone else, making it a bit easier for my family, for my partner, and for my patients. That's probably what I'm most excited for.
And my hope for you is that you will be able to hear yourself the way I hear you and the way that everyone else has a chance to hear you. You are so spot on in terms of framing on the horizon as the next week, because that is the right horizon for you. I think that sometimes we get into this way of thinking that everything has to be extreme long-term planning, and it doesn't. When I moved away from this idea that I had to have a 10-year plan and I went to a rolling 12-month, my life transformed because it meant that I didn't have to have everything figured out. And I also wasn't lying to myself because we can't really plan that far in advance because life doesn't work that way. We have no idea of the curveballs we're going to be thrown. We have no idea about these wonderful moments of serendipity and coincidence and just what may spark joy for us that we never saw coming. And so I love how you frame the way that you're looking toward the future, because the future is as you define it for yourself, as it's right for you, not as anyone else does for you. And I can't wait for you to be able to hear the wisdom and these pearls that you are doling out left, right, and center, and to just realize how much you have grown, but also just what an inspiration you are. And it doesn't have to always be in big ways. Sometimes the biggest difference you are going to make is in the life of one of your patients who you will see one day and may never see again. And it's just recognizing that from the droplet that falls and the ripples that go out from it, we have no idea ultimately where those ripples will go and what change they may make. And I look back on when I started writing about my mental health and I put it out in public, having no idea if anyone would read it or if it would matter to anybody. And now here you and I sit, 6 years on? And to look back now and realize that this makes a difference. We make a difference, and our persistence is important, not just to our families, not just to those around us, but that we really have the ability to make a bigger difference than we could ever possibly know, even if we're doing it in ways that to us seem small. Because what may seem small to us may mean the world to someone else. So I couldn't be more grateful for your friendship or for your persistence. And I'm curious who it is that you'd like to be speaking to right now.
I'd like to be speaking to future me. I think a lot of the time, sometimes there's days where I'm really harsh on myself, and then some days I'm very compassionate and kind. So it's really like a mixed potluck. But I hope that kind of in what you're saying, I can hear the persistence, I can hear the passion, the determination, and there's a lot of sadness, but in that sadness, it's a knowing that I have such a deep connection with my emotions, and that it's just learning about how to embrace that whilst also managing, I guess, the tasks and demands of life. So yes, as narcissistic as that sounds, I'd like to speak to future me and just reassure myself that I'm on the right path, that I've got the right people, holding me up, that I can come back and listen to this when there are points where I'm, no doubt going to be feeling self-conscious and that imposter syndrome and feeling just tired of it all, and that it's okay to be tired. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to have mental health conversations instead of being productive. Sorry, that's poor wording because it is a different sort of form of productivity, but just acknowledging the fact that I'm doing well. I'm still existing. I'm still talking to others around me and not shutting the world out despite it feeling like too much. And yes, just practicing that self-compassion when sometimes I know it's really, really hard and sometimes I don't even feel like myself. It's that jerk brain that's sort of taking over. So I just want my future self to know how hard that we've tried and that it's okay to keep going one step at a time. And success is measurable not just in terms of my career and how happy I am, but the fact that Liz so perfectly stated is I'm still here. And that's probably the greatest success for me. And yeah, just to cheer my future self to keep going forward. There's a lot to be excited for, even if it is just 1 week away.
I can't wait to meet future you. And future you shows up every day that you're here. So it doesn't have to be future you in 10 years or 20 years or even 50 years. Tomorrow is future you. And I'm really grateful for you. I'm really grateful for our friendship. And I love you, Emma.
All right. Love you, Liz.
Love you, friend. Bye.
Okay, bye. Bye.